Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. Are you trying to wrap your head around a roster and parenting plan? Are you worried that because your ex is in the military or a FIFO worker that you're never ever going to know when and where the children are going to be and at what time? Well, this episode is perfect for you. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hi, everyone.
Now, this is round 2 of this episode because I just deleted it. So I am very, very, very sorry, Mum. But as you said, it was a rehearsal, and now we've covered a lot of things that we're going to cover again, but in better depth.
Absolutely.
So to start with, we talked about, and I want to acknowledge that anybody who's going through a separation, it's really hard if you've got kids and you are a single parent. And the thing is, though, if you've been a FIFO partner or a military partner, being a single parent isn't as hard because you've already been doing it for some of the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth acknowledging. And I know in the last one we recorded, we referred to some issues you might have if you're sick and you're stuck on the loo with the D word, but we don't have to say that word now. So this is why we did it twice, Mum. But, you know, there are times when you are super sick and there's nobody else you can rely on, or the kids, they're waking up every 5 minutes and you can't just tap out and go, can you please take the kids? Or if they come home and go, can you mind the baby? I need to have a break. Yeah. There's no option for that.
No.
And in single mother life and single father life, there's no option for that. It's hopefully you've got a good support group. But during the marriage, if you are living that life, I think that needs to be acknowledged.
It does. And don't you dare tell anyone who's living that life at home that they are not contributing just as hard as the person who's on a fly in, fly out, or maybe on a going military training or whatever.
Yeah. So I think let's acknowledge that right at the get-go, that you guys have done it tough. If you're listening to this, if you've got rostered people, shift workers, you name it, it's hard. It is hard. So the next question is though, Mum, because most people, they go into a parenting plan or consent orders for parenting, and it's such and such has half holidays, handovers on this day, easy peasy. It's not easy when it comes to shift work. And we've had so many people write in where they think they just can't either, 1, do it, or 2, that if their ex is away, that means they look after the kids, and if their ex is home, it means they get the kids and at their whim and when they decide. And I don't think that's fair. And is that fair? And is that what happens in the court?
No, it's not what happens in the court. It's not fair on the kids because they don't know, and it's not fair on the parent who's left at home for their own mental health because they can't make any arrangements because they don't know if their other partner is coming home. Particularly, I've seen cases where the person who is doing the FIFO or the shift work will not give the other parent their roster. And so, you know, it just leaves everyone hanging in the air. So the court doesn't do that, but it's not easy. So I've done quite a few hundred roster consent orders over my career. And I usually start by, I get the roster.
So it can be done?
It can be done.
All right.
I print out a calendar, or you might not print it out these days. Oh, I could use my magic pencil on my iPad.
Magic.
And then you start blocking out days and see what it looks like.
Okay, so you start off with the calendar.
Yep, and their roster.
And any day that they're away, you just black it out.
That's right.
Yep.
And then the other days are days that are available for the person, possibly, to have time with the children. So then you start looking at, first of all, what's the maximum number of days you're going to have, and you need to look about that, and then try and work out what days they have in those non-blacked out parts of the roster. And then with careful consideration of that and a bit of effort, you can draft a program of time for the children for each possible roster.
Well, I was about to say, so you can have one roster, but if they've got like 6 rosters, you do it for all the different versions of roster.
Yes. So some people they have mornings, or then they have, mornings for 3 weeks and then afternoons for 6 weeks, or they fly out at 2:00 on a Wednesday and they come back in at 1:00, but then the next time it might be 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. So all of the possibles, you do those and you give a specific, so you start off with, if the ex, whatever their name is working on roster A as attached to this order. So you have to put the roster attached to the order so the court can see if you're doing a consent order and make sense of it, because it's very confusing to those of us who don't work rosters. But then they might have another time where they might work even. If he's working evens or
if they are on military deployment.
Yep, then this happens.
Yeah.
And then if such and such, if they're working on this roster, then this happens. And then you put the provided, however, one, that no time do they spend, the children spend more than 5 days, I think, or 6 or 7 days with the father or mother in that session. And then you also put, provided that if FIFO stops, for instance, or shift work stops, or they move closer to you or whatever, then this is the proposal that we have.
Now, could the argument be for the person that's doing FIFO or military, oh, well, I still want 50-50, even though I'm not going to be in the state or in the country or in the town, I'm going to get my mum or my sister to look after the children while I'm away, or my boyfriend or girlfriend. Is that acceptable?
I don't think so. We're still thinking about the best interests of the children. And sometimes something like that smacks a little bit of just taking the child away from you rather than spending time with the child. Or
50-50 for child support reasons.
Maybe. So what's generally expected is the time for, the shift worker's mum, sister, girlfriend, whatever, to see the children is during the shift worker's time with the children. So you normally won't get an order for the kids to spend time with someone else.
Okay.
It's really between you most of the time.
Okay.
So it just means you've just got to nut it out. And then like kids, I think, need certainty. You need certainty as well. You can put it on the fridge, right? And one lady, probably 100 years ago, in practice, she put ladybird stickers on the days they went to their other parent.
Nice.
Yeah. And then they would cross off the days that as they come, and they knew it was like 2 more sleeps till we're going to mummy's or 2 more sleeps till we're going to daddy's.
Yeah.
And she set up something similar for at the other house as well, so the kids could keep track because, it is a bit disconcerting.
Well,
another thing is you put in as your provided. However, normally if they come back from a shift and they're absolutely pooped, say it's night shift, they wouldn't want to be looking after kids straight from the minute they get home. So you've got to allow some reasonable time for sleep. Even if they say they'll be fine, it's not sensible to be fine, and the chances are it won't be the best quality time.
Right. So you kind of try and block off the travel day or the day, the night,
or the get over day.
Home. So it doesn't matter how many rosters they've got or potential rosters they could have. You can try and come up with a way to word it in your thing and attach it so that you can follow that along.
I've never seen a roster that can't be licked by putting some orders. And the lovely thing is, while it looks so gosh darn complicated, it's amazing when they've been living it for a while. People are they're comfortable with it and they don't really need to read the orders. They know the thing. And the key reason this works is that the other party gives you their roster as early as they can.
Right.
And the key reason this might fail is if the other party doesn't give you their roster.
Oh, how do you get them to do that then?
Well, unless they provide the roster, they don't get the time.
Okay.
So you'd make the orders contingent upon him or her providing the roster.
Right.
Yeah. Within 3 months or within 8 weeks of getting it. Or I have to say, there's a lot to fight about as you work it out.
It does sound a lot harder.
It is a lot harder, but it's not impossible.
Right.
And so there's personality things. There's this feeling, I don't want to cater to that person's, work. If they want time with the kids, they should get an ordinary job. Or there's the feeling
what happens when that happens? What happens if they've been doing FIFO, they've been earning the big bucks, they've been going backwards and forwards, and now that you're separating and they're like, I want 50-50 with the kids, even though they've never done it, and I'm not going to do FIFO anymore. FIFO. And people are like, oh my gosh, I'm like, he or she's never had the kids for longer than a couple of days on their own. They're not going to cope. What can people do in that instance?
I think try to be realistic and cooperative if you can, and acknowledge that they might want to spend more time with the kids, but perhaps a lead up to that and get the children gradually used to it.
And that's called stepped
orders, where A might be from this date to this date, or until this child is this age, this will be the time they spend with the person, and then B, from that date to this date, or from this age, once the child turns 4, this is the time they spend, or it might be for 6 months they do this, and you gradually end up at where you both agree it should be. And let's not forget that 50-50, the presumption of equal shared care is on its way out, thankfully. And we're just waiting on this new legislation. It's currently before the Senate, and it should come into law around Christmas this year, 2023.
Right, and we're in October at the moment.
Yeah, and it should be operative by July 24.
So those people that write into us and say, my ex just turns up whenever they want, they don't tell me what their rosters are, and then if I've got something planned or organised with the kids, they then say I'm not making the children available. Yeah. And it's like this little
You're
trap.
Alienating.
Yeah. So what do you say to those people?
I think you be proactive and say, okay, this isn't working for the kids. We need some stability. I know from being with you that you have these sort of programs. It's 3 on, 3 off, or whatever it is. Well, I've got a proposal for each one of those alternatives. Sometimes they just have one thing. It might be 3 on, 2 off, or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, and then put a proposal to them. That on the days that you get back, you don't have the children, but the next day you have the children from 9 o'clock in the morning, and then you return them to me 5 o'clock on the afternoon before you fly out again. Something like that. Just so you tie, it's like a narrative and it's tied in with the rosters, but then you've got to have or else. If the roster changes or the father or mother is no longer fly in, fly out, then this is the time that they would spend, like I said, those stepdaughters. Okay. And a little.
And again, it's general education. Yeah. Please go see a lawyer.
Yeah.
Every situation is different. And so with military, again, it's if they go on deployment, it's this. If they're not on deployment, but they're doing war games or whatever it is that they do, it's this. Yes. So you've got to sit down really and brainstorm what is every possible situation and how can we accommodate it.
You just made me very proud.
Why?
Before, because you said the 2 words that every lawyer thinks of when they're drafting these things.
Ew, what did I say?
You said, what if?
Oh, I said, what if?
Yeah. So what if he stops going away? What if she moves closer to here? What if there's military deployment? What if the training? What if they leave the military?
So you've got to have all those what ifs covered in your plan or consent orders, because it's really hard to change a consent order, isn't it?
It is. And a parenting plan's really hard to enforce. So it's a bit of, we've done episodes, I think, on those 2 components.
So it's tricky, but it can be done, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, now I want to address, we're not going to talk about super or anything like that, but we're going to talk about the contributions, because I hear this a lot. The person who's doing the FIFO is earning big bickies, because let's face it, there's mines everywhere. And the other person's going, fine, you go do that. I will stay home. I will look after the children. But then they say, well, you're not entitled to any of this money when they separate because I earned it all.
Yes. Which we should say we're from Australia and there are mines everywhere. Yes. And FIFO is fly in, fly out to your job, whoever's listening to that. And we also have DIDO.
What's that?
Drive in, drive out.
Oh, DIDO sounds
So
better.
one of the mines I know in WA, you fly to Perth and then you drive for 6 hours. So, yes. So anyway, what do you do about that? Well, we sort of touched on it. The contribution that you make as essentially a sole parent, running everything in the absence of another parent. If your child's sick and you're sick, there's no one else to take some of the slack. You just have to do it, and there's no halfway point. So you have certainly earned your share of whatever has been contributed. Okay. Absolutely. So you don't take no for an answer when it comes to that. That argument won't fly.
Okay, good.
Okay. And it's just particularly, you just need to mention it in your material, raise it early.
Yes.
And sometimes just the mere fact that she's been away for 3 weeks of every month for the last 3 years is enough for the court to say, oh, yes, well, you've made a greater contribution or you've made an equal contribution because it was hard work.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to paint the picture of what a day is like and how you manage.
So you sit down and have a little brainstorm before you go see a lawyer and write down what a typical day looks like for you.
Yes. Yep. And get your evidence of the daycare and timetables and stuff. And often the people who are spending a lot of time from home, and I think this is sad for our society, a lot of time away from home, when they come back, they're kind of, they don't fit back in because the machine of the household and the children is running very smoothly. And it's weird for it to change when dad comes back, particularly if dad is one of the authority people in the household. That really hurts, and that can really... So sometimes the very fact that a person's FIFO is enough to kind of trigger arguments and eventually the demise of the relationship.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I guess anyone who is listening to this is probably very aware of that situation. But, you know, I mean, on the plus side, if you are leaving them, at least you'll be okay managing the kids on your own because you've done it before. On the downside, though, you know, it's rough for anybody going through this.
It's really hard, and it'll be hard. And, the kids are used to one of the parents being away. So, but I don't think they ever really get used to it. But it won't be such a big shock for them when they're out. So
so basically what you're saying is you work out the rosters, you black out the days they're not around, you figure out what days they can have the kids, you figure out what days you want them to have the kids as well. Not just if they can have the kids, then they should have them. You've got to think, well, the same things that everybody else goes through in family law, you know, should the kids be with the parent for how many days and whatever?
Or it
why?
might be that on Wednesdays you have a set arrangement that you're going, you might have a little part-time job, or you might go out to dinner, or I don't know, whatever it is. And so work around that as well. It's not all about the person who used to travel.
That's the vibe I get though. Like I feel like anyone who's married to or military or FIFO or anything, the whole house revolves around that person.
They do.
And so during the divorce and separation and negotiations, they still just assume everyone will revolve around them.
And so will you. You'll keep thinking, I've
got to fit in with them.
But to be fair, if you're on a roster and you fly in, fly out, that's not as easy to change than if you were going to our place and doing a pottery class on Wednesday nights or whatever. So, the court just works that. And the court says, look, the continuation of the fly in, fly out with its attendant big salary is a benefit to the family because it will be reflected in child support and the lifestyle the children have. But it's interesting, we were talking about capacity earlier, about a person's capacity to earn.
Yes.
And sometimes people who are doing fly in, fly out, when they realise it's cost them their marriage and possibly, if they continue it, they're not going to get much time with the children. They sometimes drop fly in, fly out and get a job nearer the house and so that more stable and it's easier to make the arrangements for the children. So that can happen. Now, if child support, we talk about capacity to earn everywhere, but I think the one place that the court and child support doesn't really stridently stick to the capacity to earn is if someone who's been doing something extraordinary, like flying in, fly out, suddenly says, no, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to spend time with my children as I should. They won't be punished for that. You won't get more child support because they should have continued with the fly in, fly out. The court accepts that as a legitimate reaction.
Does the court, and I know they don't do primary carer anymore, there's no such thing as the primary carer, even though everyone still uses the term, but does the court see it as pretty much a fact that the person who isn't the FIFO worker, who isn't the military person that's always away, or some sort of roster person, they see it as a fact that they are the primary carer? You could find us on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. We're there waiting for you right now. If you want to get more out of the Divorce Course, all you have to do is go to the Divorce Course podcast at Facebook or TikTok, or the Divorce Course on Instagram. There we share bite-sized pieces of information and bite-sized inspiration and motivation to help you through this difficult time. Come and join our community and let us know you've joined. We'd love to see you there. But does the court see it as pretty much a fact that the person who isn't the FIFO worker, who isn't the military person that's always away, or some sort of roster person, they see it as a fact that they are the primary carer?
Maybe that they have been, but that isn't a factor the court looks at going forward. So that's where you probably have your family reports.
Right.
And sometimes, I can imagine a situation where a person's completely overstressed with staying home with children day in, day out while their other person's away. And then the person who's fly in, fly out comes back, they might bring them a present, they play with them all day. There's a prospect that that person's going to be their bright, shiny favourite person.
That's so hard.
It is so hard. But they will soon identify. In family reports, the reporter writers identify the person to whom the child will go if they've hurt themselves.
Okay. Wow.
And that's where they give themselves away.
So hard, Mum. Like, just I hate talking about family reports or analysing which parent the child likes more, because it is such a horrible thing, and that you usually don't do. Like, you don't need to do it.
And you can't unsay it.
No.
You can't unsay it, you can't unread it, and you can't undo it.
And there's seasons for kids, I think, where, you know, one season they might detest you. I know teenage girls usually detest their mother because it's their, but you know, it's their rebellious phase. They don't want to be like you. But then later on, they love their mother. And when they're, you know, so that, that's stereotypical. But what I'm saying is there's seasons for everything. So when it comes to looking at that, it breaks my heart, because I know that it's not matter of fact, that's how it always is or how it will always be.
Well, that's why we have court child experts, and that's why family report writers usually are very skilled in observing developmental stages for children's child needs this at this time, and as they grow older they're going to need this. And you know, it might be that a little boy is going to identify with his father at some stage, needs a father figure at some point, or a girl coming into puberty might cling closer to the mother for a while. So that's why those experts come in. Right. And remember, you're not talking about being rewarded for your extra parenting or not. You're talking about how best to have the kids spend time with both of you in accordance with their needs, and in order to make them reach their full potential,
right? So
and to be the best they can be. That's right. So it does smart. It does, and it feels ungrateful.
Being judged.
Yeah, but also too, you know, if you've ever have a partner who's got another partner, and the children come back raving over what this other mother or other father has done. And you're just like digging your fingernails and go, but I did that. But you've just got to let it all go and let the children be smoothly between the households without any tension.
Which is hard when it is a roster system. And I guess there might be some strategies that people talk about on how to, you know, transition kids into that. But like you said, people do get used to following these orders and rosters. Let's touch on manipulative and controlling. Now, I like, we've had people writing it and saying that they're FIFO. They turn up whenever they want. They ask for the kids without any warning the day before. We've got plans. And then they say that I'm not making them available and I'm alienating them. Have you seen that in the court, that the whole alienation, using their roster as a weapon?
So normally with that, I will have set it up well beforehand by saying, very happy for the kids to come and see, of course. Send me your roster. And I'll put something together. Or here's a proposal, but it requires your roster to be given to me within 7 days of you receiving it each time. And so you've set it up that way. If a person doesn't want that to be resolved, if they want to go to court, and they'll go, I'm not giving her my roster. So you won't get accused of alienation. You won't get accused of withholding. They really will look at the parent not giving the roster and goes, what's your problem? You know, so you just have to set it up. So when an allegation like that is made towards your client, it's dealt with it, and it's
if you can show the judge, and you don't have a lawyer, but if you can show the judge that you said, please, I want to sort this out, can you give me a roster and we'll make plans? And if they say at the last minute, I want to come pick up little Johnny, you're like, well, we've got plans, could you give me your roster so we can make it so that would be okay.
That would be okay.
But see a lawyer.
Yep, see a lawyer. Even better, you'd probably have an idea of what their rosters are, and it's probably one of 3 or one of 4, whatever. And so you can even write your proposals down for rotation 1, rotation 2, rotation 3, rotation 4, and all that's missing is their roster to be attached, and an obligation on them put in order that they give it to you within 7 days of them receiving it. Then they really look like a goose. And when you go to court, you've made a genuine attempt, and you've deflected that. I think roster stuff is hard, but it's harder if you don't have a written plan and your what ifs.
Yes.
What if they stop? What if they change the roster? What if?
Okay. All right. So that's manipulative and controlling. High conflict. They want to fight everything. So when it comes to like flying in, flying out and changing of things, how do you make that work smoothly?
The biggest problem I've seen with that sort of personality is that the minute they land, they want the kids, and they want them till the minute before they fly out, kind of thing. And so they're fighting about those border times, or just like every parent situation could be, they might be fighting over the number of days. Yeah. So again,
and what do you say to that?
Well, you just say, look, it's no different.
Yeah.
You might just be having your days in a bunch, or, get some advice, go and see a family report writer, get a psychologist, agree on one to talk what's developmentally appropriate for these kids. Is it appropriate that they don't see a parent for 3 weeks and then spend 1 week with the parent when they're home? And then, can he take them to school, or can she, all of that. So you just have to stay child focused. Okay. Here's an interesting thing though. Sometimes families move to an area for fly in, fly out work, but it might not be actually that close to fly in, fly out. So like the people in Perth who fly out to the mines, or people in Queensland, I know around Gladstone, Rockhampton, Mackay, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other if the central Queensland miners fly to any of those places, or even to Brisbane. And so the person who has been at home caring for the children, if they want to move, the FIFO person, fly in, fly out person, doesn't really have grounds to prevent them to move, to object to moving, because if they move them to a town that's just as close or just as many hours travel, or even closer, and there's no reason why they were stuck in the other town. Well, Rose's case, MRR and GRR, the court, basically what they can say is, well, he can fly there. He can change his destination and fly into that town, as long as there's accommodation and all of those sort of things.
That's
a bit interesting.
Okay. Sounds like a nightmare, to be honest.
It's hard.
What about when it comes to the amicable and its roster? So that should be fine.
Easy.
Should have no
easy
problems
peasy.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then the other one is avoidant.
Child-focused. Yeah, avoidant. Again, look, I know we haven't talked about this. Write them a letter, email. Haven't talked about this. I've had a go at working out times for you. What do you reckon? And do it all already, and they just have to go, yeah. Or you can say, if I don't hear from you, I'll assume you're okay with it. And the kids will be, available to see you at 4:00 on Wednesday or whatever, when you get back from your shift, or
Also give them some times, because I guess it's like any property settlement or any children's thing where you're just like, oh my gosh, it's just so overwhelming. I don't even know how we could figure out how this is going to work. And if you've got an avoidant ex, or if you're that person, you're just like, oh, well, let's just not do anything. Let's just live in limbo.
I think there's some lawyers who struggle with rosters.
Really?
Because they'll say, provided that the children will spend time for 4 days a week, provided the roster allows, or something like that. And that just leaves everything up in the air. And
that means anything.
So it's hard work, and you might think it's like that, you can't get undone, but you will be able to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you got to put your thinking hat on, get a cup of tea, get lots of chocolate, coloured pencils, get their rosters, get any what ifs. What are the potential things that could happen? What are the potential job things? Try and think about every scenario possible.
Yep.
And any scenarios yourself that you have, and then put them in, and then plan, okay, if it's this scenario, how would it work with the kids? If this scenario, how would it work with the kids? Because I guess when you look at parenting plans for people that don't have FIFO or military or whatever, they have that in there anyway.
They
go, if
Christmas.
it's school time, then this happens. If it's holiday time, then this happens. So all you're doing really is breaking it down even more to saying, if it's school time and this roster's happening, then this happens, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right. You do it in, I'd be doing it with headings and of the rosters and so forth. And don't forget your normal Christmas and other special days. But yeah, it can be done, and it really brings some certainty to the table for everybody, including the kids. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if you're sitting there at the moment pulling your hair out, going, oh my gosh, this is insane. I guess with military, it can be if they've got duty, or if they've got like those war game things they do, or if they're, going away for deployment or to war or whatever it's called. You've got all of that to consider, but I am sure that there is a way to deal with it, and there's a way around it.
Yep, I absolutely agree. Yes. It is hard, but you can get away around it. And let's face it, Family Law Act's been around since 1975.
And the military's been around.
Military's been around
forever.
all that time. The rosters systems have been around that time.
Yeah.
So that's why sometimes you'll find a set of orders that are almost 30 pages long.
Yikes.
But it covers every scenario.
Yeah.
If if you had people that you really thought would keep getting along, then you could put, like, depending on his roster, which he'll provide 1 week after gets it or she gets it, the time with the mother will be as follows on da-da-da, on da-da-da, and put the dates. and like the times, and then with no weekly period of time to be more than 5 days or whatever it is, just like you put the parameters in.
Yeah.
And then you should be able to, if it's amicable, being able to just email it off and get their buy-in.
And if it's manipulative and controlling, check for loopholes.
Oh, my gosh.
And give it to somebody else and go, can you find a loophole in this? How could they hack this?
They won't want to have that agreement because it stops the fight. They don't have control over you. They would rather have you dancing.
So if you've got a very vague parenting plan or a very vague consent orders for parenting, that's really not going to help you, because if it's vague, you can't say, but it says this time, this date, this place.
That's right. So, but then when you start doing that, you better make sure it's all in there, because if it's not in there and it's such a detailed arrangement, there's assumed that there's no sort of unspoken things, there are no agreement things.
So are you saying there's some lawyers that aren't very good at this, but there are lawyers that are good at it? What should people be looking for? No, okay, you didn't say they're not good. You're saying some lawyers just kind of don't know how to deal with
That's
it.
right, yes.
So what should people be bringing if they're military or FIFO or rostered? What do they bring into a lawyer for, and what do they look for in a lawyer to help them with this?
You will gauge from the first appointment if they can help you. I'm hoping if they've done our course, they could probably do the orders themselves. Actually, listening to this, probably you can do the orders yourself. But yes, you want
get legal advice first.
And get them to look at it and the what ifs from a lawyer.
Yeah.
Lawyer's side. I think, we talk about perhaps our clients being avoidant. I just think our listeners might be stuck. Some of them might be overwhelmed rather than avoidant. It's not that they don't want to sort it out.
They don't know where to start.
They don't know where to start. It just looks all too hard. So if they get one message from today, is that you can work it out.
Yeah.
You could just put all the what ifs in, and make it clear, the parameters, and attach the rosters, make an arrangement for the rosters to be given to you, and make a proposal for each type of roster and your home and hose.
Okay. So you're saying you'll get a vibe from the lawyer if they're willing to help you or they know what they're doing, and also take the rosters with you.
Yes.
Take as much information as you can about the FIFOing or the military stuff so that they can get their head around it.
Yeah, it takes longer than you think, or maybe that's just me, but people who have lived with the rosters for a couple of years are very au fait with it. Like he's on evenings on that day. And so you've got to get that sort of familiarity into your lawyer's head.
Yes.
And then they can work with it.
Right.
And you ultimately, I think if you run your eye over it and the what ifs, you're the person who knows more than perhaps the lawyer, your own personal situation.
Yeah.
And make sure those what ifs are addressed.
Definitely. Okay. All right. So if you're out there right now and you've got some ex that's just turning up whenever they feel like it, not keeping you in the loop of their roster, and you're just pulling your hair out because you just want to have some stability, and let's face it, kids need it and you need it, then, give it a try. Get your colouring pencils out, sit down at the coffee table and give it a go. And, obviously if you've got a manipulative controlling or a high conflict, you need to kind of suggest their idea as well and make them involved. Otherwise, they're not going to want to have a bar of it. And with your avoidant people, then, do it all for them and say, hey, look at this. I've come up with this idea. What do you think? But you can do this. It's not hard. You don't have to live day by day, week by week, month by month. It is not a good way to live.
Because you matter too.
Yes.
Everything was bent towards the other person's career because they were earning the big money usually, or you might have decided jointly that your partner would go into the Defence Force for that extra income and so forth. But your life still matters, and it matters going forward as well. So don't be afraid to put your needs.
Yeah. You have a life.
Yep. And you might want to finally have a career.
Yep.
Because you're not slopping around different towns.
Picking up after them.
Yeah, and following the work.
That's not your job.
No.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Mum, for your time. And everybody who's listening, good luck.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye. If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.